Hello and welcome to my easy to understand guide to postmodernism and popular culture. This video is going to be particularly relevant for you if you are studying postmodernism in a little bit more depth, and especially if you are studying the CIE Media Exam Board, because postmodernism appears as an optional topic on the second exam paper. The specification says that you need to understand the links between postmodernism and popular culture. When we talk about pop culture or popular culture, we generally mean culture that is popular with a kind of mass or mainstream audience. And that could be things like TV programs, films, news, music videos, all sorts of stuff. Some people refer to this as low culture, and that's because popular culture, for some reason, we often think of as being quite low in terms of appealing to people who are less educated, perhaps being something associated more with working class people, something that is kind of mass and mainstream. So music videos and video games and TV and social media is kind of pop culture. Whereas we sometimes have the kind of contrasting point about high culture, which is associated with more kind of educated or upper class audiences, things like the ballet, the opera, Shakespeare. They're not necessarily things that we associate with big mass mainstream audiences. They're not things that we consider to be super popular with huge numbers of people. They are aimed at people who have a bit more kind of education and cultural knowledge. Postmodern media products often borrow from other cultural products, and that includes pop culture products. So, for example, they might make intertextual references to other products. Ariana Grande's music video, Thank You Next, makes regular intertextual references to other pop culture rom-com teen movies like Mean Girls, Legally Blonde, etc. Leotard is a good theorist to look at if you are interested in coming up with some theoretical ideas about referencing pop culture. But it's not just pop culture that is referenced, it is all culture that can be referenced in postmodern media. Sometimes it's high culture that is referenced. So, for example, in the TV show Inside Number 9 and the episode Wuthering Heist, they reference a number of both high and low culture products. So the low culture or the pop culture stuff that they reference would be things like gangster movies or heist movies, which are quite a popular genre of or subgenre of action. But they also make reference to a lot of high culture, more educated stuff. So they make reference to Shakespeare, they make reference to a theatrical style called commedia dell'arte through the use of masks. So there's a kind of mishmash in terms of referencing not just pop culture, but also kind of what might be considered more high culture as well. And this can sometimes blur the lines between what might be considered pop culture and what isn't. And the reasons that media products do this is it can often encourage audiences to interpret a product in a particular way. So, for example, when you're watching a music video and they're making intertextual references to other products, sometimes it encourages you to look at things from a different perspective. In Taylor Swift's Bad Blood, when they're referencing, a variety of films, it encourages you to think about why she's referenced those films, and maybe it encourages us to interpret the music video in a different way. Of course, some audiences are going to need some knowledge of pop culture in order to recognise these references. So, you're not going to necessarily understand the references in music videos if you don't know what they're referencing. If you have never seen Legally Blonde or Mean Girls, then maybe you're not necessarily going to get the messages or why Ariana Grande is putting these references into her video. It doesn't stop you enjoying her music video. I think you can still get a lot of superficial enjoyment out of it. But it adds meaning if you do understand the references to pop culture. And the use of pop culture and high culture together might make high culture more understandable and accessible. So, for example, in something like, Inside Number 9, Wuthering Heist, adding in, Shakespeare and commedia dell'arte into kind of a gangster heist movie narrative, it makes potentially the commedia dell'arte Shakespeare part a bit more understandable and accessible to a more mainstream audience. Things that perhaps audiences might not engage with on a more regular basis. There aren't many people who watch commedia dell'arte, for fun. Whereas if you're including it within a kind of comedy sketch show, an anthology series, it might make it a bit more accessible, a bit more interesting to audiences. Pop culture is often about having particular things that you're expecting. So you're expecting particular tropes, particular conventions to happen within, a horror movie, for example. And when a postmodern product plays with those conventional elements of that pop culture, it makes it quite interesting. So, for example, in the TV series and the film, What We Do in the Shadows, they take elements of the popular vampire subgenre of horror, and they mess around with the conventions. So we've got vampires, but we're not expecting, and what is unusual is the fact that these vampires are housemates. They're having meetings about the chores and the washing up, and the fact that their coffins are a bit messy and things like that. So it makes it unusual, it makes it funny, because they're messing around with the conventions of typical pop culture moments that we think we know what's going to happen. It means that postmodern products can often do the unexpected by referencing pop culture but doing it in a kind of slightly unexpected or strange way. It can make something more interesting or exciting or funny. So that was my simple guide to the link between postmodernism and pop culture. Don't forget, it's not just pop culture that postmodernism references. Sometimes it can be more high culture products too. Don't forget to check out my channel for other videos that might be relevant to you.